welcome to Divine Times. It's a moment of consciousness, and my name is Hilton Milan, and I just want to introduce you to our special guest. We need to redo this again, I'm sorry. Not Chip.
Chipkar. Chris.
It was.
It still is.
All right, let us carry on. I'm so privileged to have a moment in the divine, and I thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chipkar, Joel Chipkar, and Steve Magnus. I've known you for years doing divine work, and Joel, I'm just beginning to know you. Really our first time meeting.
Yes.
And I understand through your work with Falun Gong
Yes.
that you're doing nothing but divine work.
Thank you.
So, what are the things we need to be aware of more to actually open up and learn from? What are the lessons for us to learn?
Well, we're here basically to spread the word that the Falun Gong is a spiritual practice that promotes the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, and that it's being viciously and unjustly persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hoping that we could raise awareness about these issues on your show.
Perfect. There are, Steve, you've taken on, seeing something here. What are your first views?
Well, when I was coming over here a couple of weeks ago, I saw 500 people, 600 people coming down the street, and I saw these women making these hand gestures of such great beauty that I could sense the energy coming from them, and the energy was love and the flow of energy. And then some young woman came up to me and gave me a folder, and we didn't say anything. I just looked at her, and it seems like we looked at each other for eternity, like we knew each other. And then I walked down the street, and some young kid, my grandson's age, comes running up to me out of the crowd and gives me another leaflet. And I looked at him, and he smiled, and we went on, and I thought, Spirit is speaking to me. I've got to find out who these people are, and I got to bring them on the show, because there's these openings in your illusions where you see reality, and I could see reality, and I wanted it presented to the public. Yeah, really good stuff, Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thank you.
It seems that, I've known Steve to always create sacred space, but it's really available to all of us that are, open to being connected to, looking for, finding, expressing the divine.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what spoke to me when I first learned Falun Gong.
Yes.
For people who don't know, Falun Gong is the ancient Chinese meditation and exercise practice that promotes the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. It incorporates 5 sets of beautiful exercises like meditation, qigong exercises,
yes,
and also a study of how to assimilate one's spirit, how to assimilate one's soul to the principles of what the Chinese call Zhen Shen Ren, or truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
Yes.
And we believe that all of us, every human being, is a god. We're all gods who've come to Earth to figure out how to get back to where we come from.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we assimilate our spirits, assimilate our ourselves on a day-to-day basis to what we believe the intrinsic nature of the universe is, which is truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
Yes.
And when we do that, then we unlock our enlightenment, and we unlock our virtues, and things start to open up. We feel much more compassion and much more tolerance in our everyday lives. So for me, it really spoke to me when I started practicing this 20 years ago.
Yes.
What happened was in China in the early 90s, Falun Gong spread across China faster than any spiritual discipline in history. It was practiced by over 100 million people, which is like maybe 4 times the population of Canada. And it was supported by the government, it was endorsed by the government, it was awarded by the government, until the Communist Party realized that there were, in fact, over 1/12 of the population that was practicing a spiritual discipline that was not controlled by the Communist Party. And in China today, every spiritual discipline, every religion must be controlled by the Communist Party, or they're banned a heretical organization, or they're banned a cult, and they're persecuted. So in 1999, the Chinese Communist Party approached Falun Gong and said, this is a really popular practice. We want to control it. We want to start making money off it. Falun Gong said, no, this is a spiritual discipline. It's for the spirit of the people. It's not for sale, and they went on their way. Well, the Chinese Communist Party basically initiated a massive crackdown on the Falun Gong at that time. And for the past rounding up to 20 years, there's been every human rights organization in the world, every Western government has condemned the Communist Party for horrific crimes against humanity, including torture, rape, and the organ harvesting of millions of people in China to fuel the Chinese Communist Party's organ transplant trade. So we're here basically trying to raise awareness of these mass atrocities happening in China behind closed doors of a totalitarian regime that's voted the #1 human rights abuser in the world. And we're here as a spiritual discipline, as everyday people like you and I,
Yes.
who come together to try to raise awareness in order to bring justice and against the people who created these atrocities in China.
Yes. Along with the awareness and, these challenging times, I'm compelled to ask, can you see the divinity in any of the challenge or even the persecution because of the disciplines of truthfulness? And maybe if you would also expand upon compassion and what that looks like, and specifically forbearance.
Great question, Hilton. It's what drives us. The divinity is what Falun Gong is. I think what happened in our world over the past, not very long, maybe 30, 40 years, society has given up the divine. They've given up the divinity. They don't respect divinity anymore. They don't respect spirituality or the belief that gods, not only, you might believe in one god or another god, or it doesn't matter, but the belief in a higher power doesn't exist anymore. And what drew me to Falun Gong was not in the beginning the belief of a higher power, but I always had that question in my mind, like, why am I here? What's the meaning of life? It doesn't matter how much money I had or how many material things I had, yes, or how many women I had in my life. Like, yes, these things never brought me any sort of contentment or peace. And when I started to learn Falun Gong, I realized that we are here for a reason. We're here for that reason of spirituality, of the divinity, to get back to where we come from, to bring compassion into our world on a very day-to-day and practical basis. It's not like, spirituality nowadays to many people is very esoteric or very kind of in the clouds, but I believe spirituality encompasses everything. And yes, if you're spiritual, you have to be responsible. You have to be a responsible member in your society. You have to be responsible to your family. You have to do good at your job, because how else can you, spread the word of goodness unless you're a good person yourself?
Yes.
And this is what really drew me to Falun Gong.
Yes.
So, yeah, great question regarding, compassion, truthfulness.
Right.
Forbearance, we've learned. Growing up a white male in a suburban, subdivision in West Toronto,
yes,
I never knew what persecution meant. I never knew what discrimination was until I was walking down the street one day in one of the Falun Gong parades, and someone came up to me and said, you Falun Gong, you deserve to be persecuted because you're political and you're, members of a cult. And it hit my heart so powerfully then that I realized that my mission in all this is to help innocent people, not to really rescue the Falun Gong from the Communist Party, because as we know in the universe, like the universe keeps score. You know,
Yes.
what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
You know, the Communist Party in our lifetime, I believe, is going to fall because of the terrible things they've done.
Yes.
But the innocent onlookers, the innocent bystanders who are watching this and who are being bombarded by the number one weapon in every genocide campaign in history, which is propaganda. Propaganda has been used, as we know, in Hitler's time, in the Rwandan genocide. Every genocide that we know of, the number one weapon used is propaganda to turn public opinion against the victim and to hide the crimes against humanity that the perpetrator is perpetrating.
Yes.
The Chinese Communist Party now is using propaganda to turn innocent people against the victim, against Falun Gong. And we believe that, again, being spiritual, the
Yes.
spirit is what's most important.
Yes.
And if you have a heart that hates innocent people, then your spirit is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that these people are educated, that they at least see our side, and they have a choice to make, either support the righteous or side with the evil. And we believe that, you know, through our truthfulness, through our compassion, and through our tolerance, our forbearance, that through 20 years of a terrible persecution, that people will start to realize, well, hold on a second, something doesn't add up here. You know, the Chinese government says Falun Gong is this, but for 20 years I've seen Falun Gong like this.
Yes.
And to me, they look peaceful. To me, they look like good people.
Yes.
So the persecution must be wrong.
Yes.
And that's what our goal is.
In the practices, you know, the basic principles, the disciplines, could you introduce them to us?
Well, the number one principle in the Falun Gong is, in order to unlock your enlightenment, you have to build what we call virtue, or de, in Chinese. It's virtue. There's two substances that we have in our bodies. We call one karma, which is the black substance. And if you accumulate too much karma, then you're accumulating heaviness. You're accumulating evil. You're accumulating bad. The virtue is the white substance. It's the essence of who we are. It's the essence of being a good person, of being compassionate, of being tolerant, and in order to enlighten, we have to eliminate or basically kind of diffuse the karma and create more of the white substance, or the virtue.
Yes.
Okay, it's like a bottle filled with dirty things, right? You throw the bottle, you cap the bottle and throw it in the river. It's going to float to the bottom. Once you let out a little bit of that dirt, the bottle will float up a little more.
Yes.
If you let out more dirt, the bottle will float up on the surface, and you can't push it down no matter how you try. So we believe that the number one thing that you have to do as human beings in order to enlighten is to be a good person, right?
Is there any relevance to, I think it's the chi or tai chi, the black, the circle with part black with a white dot, and then the white with the black dot?
Well, the Falun Gong believes in the accumulation of Gong energy, right? In Qigong, you're talking about the Tai Chi.
Yes.
Tai Chi is another spiritual practice, right?
All right.
Qigong is again another spiritual exercise practice that used to be many thousands of years ago complete cultivation practice to help cultivate the mind and the body.
Yes.
And with the Falun Gong, we tend to gravitate more towards the Gong energy. It's almost like there's two different kinds of energies in our understanding. There's a Qi energy and the Gong energy. Now the Qi energy, you can go for a massage, or you can feel good, and then you get in your car and drive down the street and someone cuts you off, and then you lose that feeling, and you're swearing and
raging, and
because it's
acting out
because the Qi energy is very ephemeral. It comes and goes very easily.
Yes.
But the Gong energy is more solidified. It's more solid because you work for it. So when we're doing our exercises, there's some the second exercise is called holding the wheel, and we hold the wheel above our heads
Yes.
in certain positions for about half an hour. And also our sitting meditation is usually an hour long as well, where we do the full lotus. And of course we feel pain in the legs at some time, and
Yes.
your back might feel a little painful. But if you can forbear through the hour, you're working for that energy. You're working for that gong energy. Another aspect I could use to explain it is when I first started practicing, I would go home and maybe have an altercation with my wife where she would say something that would push my buttons, and instead of reacting, instead of getting mad at her like I used to do,
Yes.
I would forbear. I would realize the principles of Falun Gong would come into my head, and I would say, wait, I'm not supposed to yell, because if I yell, I'm creating more karma for myself. So I'm just going to relax. I'm going to understand that she's her own being. She deserves to be who she is, and I could look at the situation with more compassion. And when I did that, I could feel this kind of surge in me. It was interesting. It was almost like an energy surge. And I learned later that this was part of the gong energy that I was creating in myself by following the principles of truthfulness and compassion, and not reacting to my desires to attack or desires to get angry.
Yes.
So
or
it was,
to react, or to
react,
to push back.
yeah. So it was very interesting. I was kind of getting more in tune with the universal energy of what we believe is the intrinsic universal energy of Jen Shen Ren, or truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
Yes. It seems, and I feel this palpably, this sacred space that you embody, and it seems the practice embodies. I have in past years walked by or driven by Falun Gong practitioners that and seen some of the movements and the hands up,
right.
And not just being touched by the utter peacefulness.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very powerful statement, I think. When you come across that scene, because everything in our life is so busy now. Everything is so hectic and so chaotic, and in the middle of the street, or in the middle of a busy metropolitan city, you can see people doing these beautiful exercises, and they don't seem to be fazed by anything that's happening around them. Yet they're very aware of what's happening around them. That's the beauty of Falun Gong as well. It strengthens the main consciousness, so we really know what's going on at all times.
Yes.
But nothing moves our heart, nothing moves our mind. So we can still do what we're supposed to do, be that responsible person and that that practical person, but still hold true to our spirituality at the same time. It's a very powerful place to be, and a very special place to be. And I'm glad that I have been able to find this, and it's really helped me in my life.
I feel your groundedness in sacred space, and truly, it brings divine times, present.
Yeah.
What is, and in your practice here, how quickly can someone develop these disciplines or experience this in themselves, so that they are beginning to generate their own sacred space, and Gong, and I'll also ask you, could you define Falun Gong? Because it shifts the whole meaning for me. Like Gong has had a negative context as that bell, and yes, and now Falun Gong has a whole new empowerment,
right,
enlightening aspect. So please let's discuss
well,
these. And Steve, jump in as like you're sole guardian here, an angel. You just bring about so much good.
As soon as he answers your question,
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
I want to tell a little story, but I want him to be expressive of what's within him.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yes.
To answer quickly of Falun Gong, Falun means law wheel of the great law. So Falun, there's two words that people may come across, Falun Gong and Falun Dafa. Falun Dafa is the same thing as Falun Gong.
Yes.
Falun Dafa means law wheel of the great law. Falun Gong is steeped in the Buddhist teaching, the Buddhist school of thought. It's not Buddhism, it's not a religion, there's no worship, there's no rituals, there's no mantras. And the beautiful thing about it is it's actually free. There's no money involved whatsoever. And I think coming from my background, I learned Falun Gong when I was in my early 30s. I was never really a spiritual person at the time. I mean, we used to go to church when we were younger because, that was the thing to do.
Yes.
Exactly, right? But I never felt the draw to any sort of spirituality. And when I learned Falun Gong, I knew in my mind that if I wanted to do something spiritual, then number one, it had to be free. That was my kind of starting point. And so I was drawn to Falun Gong actually through my mother, who learned it in the beginning. And when I saw powerful changes in her, then I realized this is something that I wanted to kind of look into.
What did you see in her over what time period?
Over a time of about 6 to 7 months. It didn't take her long at all to really get the teachings. For me, it took more of like a practical kind of, fall on your face and get back up, and fall on your face and get back up. But my mom's story is really interesting. She went through a lot of hardships in her life. Her and my father divorced when I was young. My dad was one, very, very strong, powerful person, could really get to push your buttons. And whenever he needed a fight, he would call my mom to push her buttons, and they'd get into a fight. And my mom would be crying, and my father would be upset, and they'd both hang up the phones. And when my mom started learning Falun Gong, it didn't change my father. My father still called her up looking for a fight, but the way my mom handled it was completely different. Like, nothing could push her buttons, and she was light on the phone. And then I could hear my dad on the other end starting to laugh. Like, they would have such a conversation where my mother was able to turn the whole situation around, where he hung up the phone in good spirits, she hung up the phone in good spirits. And I was watching this. I witnessed this, and I'm like, wow, I really want to know what this Falun Gong thing is that she's been learning, because it completely turned that whole relationship around that was very, very volatile for like 15, 20 years. And so after that, I started to read the teachings and to do the exercises, and I found, in a matter of months, I could kind of get it. But again, it's practical. It's a practice thing. We're not Buddhas. We're not gods. We're on the path to Buddhahood. So, one day I might feel grounded. The other day I might feel, off my kilter. And but through my practice, like through my exercises every day and through reading our teachings, it gets me back down to where I feel really, really empowered. And that's the beauty of Falun Gong. And it's almost like a ladder to help us gain our enlightenment. Each rung is a certain step where we have to walk that path. And it hasn't let me down in 20 years. Like, it's expansive. It just keeps going and going and going. And again, the beauty about it that I really respect is that nobody's ever asked me for a dime. Nobody's ever asked me what my name was. Write down your address. Put something. Donate. We won't accept donations even during the persecution times. We're a registered charity group, but we don't accept donations. We don't accept handouts. If you walked by the people on the street that you see doing exercises and you put some money down beside them, they would chase you to give it back. They would be grateful that you had it in your heart that you wanted to help,
yes.
But they wouldn't accept your money. And that's the beauty about it. And I think that's the reason why it continues to be so pure, is because it hasn't been able to be tainted by politics or by money or by power.
Yes.
It just is truth, compassion, and tolerance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there actually, I'm going to come back to that.
Sure.
Steve, you had something wonderful that I wanted to hear
Well, I
about.
have something that your speaking has evoked in me. There's an Iranian gentleman that I met, and he was persecuted in Iran for being whatever he was, but he wasn't a subversive. And they sentenced him to be tortured, but when they sentence you to be tortured, they're going to torture you to death. And he went to the place, and the guy started torturing him, and he said, I just gave him goodwill. I watched my terror from a distance, and I turned my face to God and let whatever was going to happen. And he said, I love myself, I love my torturer. And the torturer broke down and started crying, because using the principles you're talking about, he wasn't reacting to the world, building karma. he was a channel for something higher. And the guy says, how much money do you have? He says, okay, give me your money. It's not enough. He says, I'm going to use my money. And they went to the front gate and they bribed the guard, and he got the guy out of there. And the guy got out because he knew that he was looking to a higher place. So I have a question for you. Just pretend right now that the Chinese have us, and you're going first, and they're going to kill you, and they're going to take your organs. And this is our last moments together. What would you say to Hilton and I, knowing that you're going to go first and they're going to commit an atrocity upon you and we're to follow? What would your last words be to us from that highest place within you? What would you say to me first? I have to let you go there. I'm not going to fight it. And they're going to do you. So what comes through to say to me?
I think what I would say is that it'll be all right. That we're all going to be saved. We're all going to be okay.
Please say that to Hilton too.
You know. So I'm getting a little emotional. It's a good question. It's, you know, we're all going to be okay. That's what I would say. That we're all going to be saved.
Yeah.
And Steve, I've heard stories like that from in China. I've heard stories exactly like that, where people have been able to get out of labor camps. You know, many people don't make it. You know, many people don't make it. Many people are killed, and not once has the Falun Gong ever raised a hand, and not once have we ever fought back or retaliated with violence, because it, you know, we see the higher purpose. We see the higher end result. And unfortunately, you know, those down there who are forced sometimes to do the evil, they're the ones that we have most compassion for, because they know not what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
And when we do that, we awaken them, even though it may take time for them to awaken completely. And we lift ourselves up, because we cannot become that which hates us, because that takes us to a lower level. And if we're all going to be going out there to be harvested, our organs, they're going to murder us. I can't become like them. And what I would say to us three is that it gives me an inner peace to know that we're going to die together. Not that we want to, the Spirit wants to intervene, whatever, but it looks like we're going to die together. I couldn't die in better company. And there's something about that unification of three souls that are awake. Because if you have to go, you want to die, and you want to leave this level consciously. Because even in the subtle worlds, we exert an influence there. We meet other levels. And if we leave this level, which is a tough level to leave, and if we leave it giving, emanating, evoking love in the people around us, even though they may not be aware of it, when we go to the next level, we do the same thing, and on the way up. And whether you believe in coming around again or whatever, some of the paths say that when you can leave in love, even though you're being persecuted, that when you return for the sole purpose of teaching others what you learned under duress, what you learned at the lowest level, the grossest level of vibration. So we're not going out that way, we're making a break this way. Because Spirit just said that that door is unlocked. They don't even know that. But if I responded with hatred, we would go to our deaths.
Or fear.
Or fear. Yes, the fear would really draw us there. But this door's open, and Spirit just let us know. So we'll be able to get out of here, because Spirit wants us alive.
Or like your example with the Iranian man, the Spirit acted through his persecutor,
Yes.
who got him out.
Yes.
You know,
That's truly amazing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that has happened in China too. You know, I'm in awe of wonder at the infinite capacity of people to rise to the highest level of their humaneness and their humanity. It just amazes me. And it's like, someone can be a scientist, he can be an artist, but show me somebody that under the direst of conditions, he's risen to the highest part of himself. And it's like there's an energy flow from that people. If you're around people that have been through that, there's an energy flow coming from them, as you know all too well. And it's like you're lifted up by their energies. And there's a principle like that. You can see it in the animal world. When the geese fly, they fly in formation. And in the very first one, cuts through the wind and pushes the air down so that the other ones can ride. So as a formation, they can go thousands of miles. But as just a single one, they couldn't do that.
Right.
So
It's the same down in the world below, in the sea world, fish that swim together in a school.
Yes.
And they're not competing, they're collaborating in
Yes.
flow.
It's the universal energy.
it is, it's the universal energy.
You get that sometimes when you're driving down you're driving on the highway, let's say, and you're going to turn into a lane, and the other guy's going to turn at the same time, and you both don't see each other, but you know, and you kind of like just kind of go back in your own lanes. It's almost like a dance.
Yes, it is.
You know, you can get into that kind of that wave where you know what people are thinking, you know what people are going to do, you know, and it's an interesting place to be. And yeah, when you can tap into that. And I mean, I'm not a poster boy for that. I have my good days and I have my bad days as well, right? But
Everybody
don't
has
we
that.
all? Yeah.
Well, light and dark. And with that, you know, it's the harmonizing so that we get to choose more light or more dark.
You get to choose. I think that's the most important part. Is there is a choice.
Each one of us.
Yeah, there is a choice. I remember. I'm not sure if either of you have ever seen the movie Passion of the Christ. It was the controversial Mel Gibson movie.
Yes.
Powerful movie. I mean, I'm not Christian, but
Yeah.
I sobbed through that movie because it was such a Jesus was a powerful person, came down to help people ascend,
Yeah.
spiritually, and they brutally persecuted him. There's this one scene where Pontius Pilate was making that decision whether to persecute Jesus or not, whether to crucify Jesus or not. And in the movie, there was this evil specter. He would come in and out. Nobody would see him because he was a specter. He was a ghost with a cape on, and he would come in and out of a scene when something was going to happen. Well, when Pontius Pilate was just about to make that decision to persecute Jesus, and he did make the decision, the specter came into the scene, and out of the back of his cape, this deformed child came out. His arm came out and touched Pontius Pilate on the shoulder.
Wow.
And to me, it was just sent shivers up my spine because I realized at that point, that signified that Pontius Pilate, his choice to do evil, stained his soul for eternity. And I think this is what people don't realize when they steal or when they do bad things against others for selfishness or for they're creating a roadmap for the rest of their life. They're creating a roadmap for their spirit. And, negativity begets more negativity.
Yes.
So if you make these choices, it's going to come around.
Yes.
Even if it's not in this lifetime, which it always comes around in this lifetime. But even if you think, some people say to me, oh yeah, but what's his name? He's got so much money, he's not suffering. I say, I bet you he is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just hidden by all these material things.
Yes.
Everything you have to pay. Like I said in the beginning, the universe keeps score.
Yes.
So if you do good, your soul, your spirit will get this in the future and in future lives. If you do bad, you have to pay that back. So it's an interesting concept.
It's like we have divine accounts.
We have divine accounts.
Yes.
And we don't keep the bank account. The universe does.
Right.
You
And
know, it's
we're
a
only
cause and
accountable
effect.
to whether we're making positive deposits or
Or
negative ones.
Yeah, and it's all you. You
Yes.
have to reap, or sow whatever it is that you put into that account.
And it's our interpretations into our actions, into our thoughts.
Everything, especially your thoughts. Like
Yes.
people think it's just the actions, but it's your thoughts that create those actions in the first place, right? It's the negative thought that creates the feeling of want or desire that creates the action of wanting to steal something or wanting to hurt someone. So if you can stop that thought and change your thought to think truthful or to think compassionate or tolerant, you change the entire trajectory of your entire life.
You start functioning from a higher level. Instead of being the slave of your body and mind, part of you awakens and looks upon the mind as a parent would the child. And everything's happening not for punishment, but for teaching. And sometimes we have moments, maybe even days of clarity where we're peaceful and call it our inner body of mind is jumping all over, but we don't move with it. And that's when we learn the greatest things about the mind.
Right.
And our body isn't up where our stomach is sore, whatever, and the environment, everybody's giving us a hard time. But if that part can stay awake during the day by setting up an intent. I wish to stay awake on the highest level, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. You stay awake, and then when you go to sleep, even your dreams, you're aware of your dreams going on, but you're not living in fear.
Right.
You're not reacting to what's going on. You're aware that that's a level of reality, and by intent, you have chosen to live in, for want of a better word, live in God, be in God. And it sounds so simple to do, but when Hilton and I went out for a bite to eat, and we came back in, we came across a very person that was very negative towards us. And we had to make a snap decision. What are we doing? And Hilton is a very open-hearted man. His capacity to love, he just loves. And this person took a psychic dagger and stabbed him in the heart. And I could actually sense that happening. I just closed myself off him for the moment, let the energy bounce off. I looked at Hilton's like this. And so I says, this is the greatest teaching we've had today. I says, when you can sense that energy coming towards you, let it bounce back. Go to the part of yourself that can witness, because you set up an intent to stay awake. And what happens psychically or psychologically and physically, you're going to just be able to view it without the identification to it. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, it flows and it becomes pure. Mm-hmm. Positive, negative emotions, positive, negative thoughts, they're just thoughts, they're just emotions. You are not your thoughts, you are not your body, you are not your environment. At the same time, paradoxically, you are. At the center of the mandala is where you begin to dwell. And that's what I sense in your teaching. You stay in the center as much as you can. When you fall down, you get up and you go back to the center. Because it's okay to fall down as long as you are stumbling towards the light.
In the stumbling towards the light, I have not yet, until today, imagined dying, the close of this body, at the same time as others. So now 3 men. And I had imagined, okay, this life is done. We've served, we've loved, we've lived, we've learned, we've laughed. So we've languished. And we have that discipline that we're committed to in truthfulness. And the nobility of spirit, of sacredness, of brotherhood. And if there were women here, like familyhood, sisterhood, and it's like human familyhood, with only love prevails. Even to whatever our persecutors or challengers or tormentors have been. It's only love, in their case, frustrated love. And then just giving, I'm learning just from our examples today, to, as much as I love to give and be positive, to everyone, there are times that I forget that the positive is not going to come back all the time. There are people that are committed to giving negative. And their worldview is, I need to have control and feel safe. And the only way I feel safe is to have control.
Right.
So this is diametrically opposite. And actually, even in that opposites, in the duality, it seems that there is a oneness that the teachings and the trainings and discipline are giving you.
There's a dignity
Yes.
as well that we have to respect and uphold. So when you're met with adversity, we have to be dignified. We have to hold ourselves and be I think the number one thing that I've learned in order to keep that dignity and to keep that in my focus is not be weighed down by my sentimentality.
Yes.
Because as human beings, we're all steeped in sentimentality.
Yes.
And sometimes we can get our sentimentality in the way of truth, in the way of dignity, in the way of justice, right, or righteousness. So that's something that I've really appreciated with the teachings as well. Is it teaches me how to differentiate, how to see the sentimentality and understand that that's not me. Like that these thoughts are not my thoughts. These feelings that I feel, I can acknowledge them, but they don't define who I am. And I think that for me has been very powerful because I was never able to see that differentiation before between reality and also and sentimentality. Right. So that has helped me to really stay dignified and stay true and also honest and just to people who come at me with what I feel is an adverse reaction or something. Instead of getting angry or frustrated or hurt. These are all sentimentalities.
Yes.
What's really happening? Do they need something that I have to give them? And sometimes it's not all love and compassion. Sometimes if you have a child, the child needs discipline.
Yes.
It doesn't need punishment from an angry heart or from a frustrated or
Or fearful.
irritated or fearful place.
Yes.
But it needs to be educated.
Yes.
And sometimes it needs punishment for that education. That's two different starting points,
Yes, it is.
right?
completely.
So to keep that in mind when we when we come into contact with these opposite forces has really helped me a lot. Yeah.
There's a joke about this, about being dignified and maintaining your sense of your higher self. And, maybe we could edit this if it doesn't fit in completely, but it fits in somewhat. The guy says, Montreal, he says, only fallen women and hockey players come from Montreal. The guy says, my mother comes from Montreal. He says, what team does she play for? So he didn't miss a beat. He remained dignified. And he made the guy laugh. And he raised the person's vibration too, because he's coming from an inner place of awareness. So when we do that in our life, we are fulfilling the tenet, the precept of being dignified and keeping contact with that finer place that's within us that vibrates at such a high frequency that sometimes we're not aware of it. And when we come to our divine times, we enter into that place. And sometimes it's like, holy mackerel, I've been away from here all week. But when you go back, it's so comfortable, and you can stay a little bit longer and a little bit longer until you begin to dwell in the higher place. And you can joke with the world and make them laugh, even though they want to attack you. And you can affect your children because all the games they play, you play the game, but you're also above it at the same time. The whole thing is that to the degree that we're individually aware, we help the whole collective of humanity rise as yeast makes the bread rise. Just one person rises a little bit, and all humanity is just raised a little bit.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so whatever path we follow, once we get to that level, it seems that it's all the same path. We use different words, but the words beyond words are the same words. It's of our species. It's the words of our species. And I'm not going to say more. I'm going to go on to something else. That's the important part. Let's stick with essentials.
On the essentials, you were mentioning that there are over 100 million people, or 110 million. Is that current, or that was...
That was back then. There's more than that. Again, Falun Gong is being practiced in, I think, 80 countries around the world, and it's been translated into, or 120 countries around the world, and it's been translated into 80 different languages now.
Yes.
And it's just non-sectarian. It's, it travels across boundaries, racial boundaries. Everyone can practice Falun Gong, and
Regardless of their, religious beliefs, this is, as I say, non-denominational, you said.
you can try. You can
Yes.
try. There's a principle in all spirituality, though, that you can't put your foot into two boats.
Yes.
Right? You put your foot into two boats, you're practicing two different things at one time.
Right.
Then the universal energies or the gods overlooking, they'll figure you don't know what you want, so they kind of
Right.
won't overlook you, right? So
Yes.
we have Christian people, we have Buddhist people, we have Taoist people who come, Jewish people who come, and
Muslim people.
Muslim people, they come. Yeah, a lot of people.
Atheists?
come. You know what? Atheists. My line to atheists is, why not hedge your bet? Why not hedge your bet?
Why not hedge your bets?
Who knows who's right or who's wrong when the end comes, right? But
Right.
open your heart to some divine understanding, and why not?
Yes.
Why not hedge your bet? And when the end comes, maybe you were right, maybe we were wrong, but at least,
Yeah.
you might have.
What if it was the other way
What
around?
if it was the other way around?
Yeah.
Right? So it's hard to discuss with atheists, and I think that's the crux of the persecution in China. Is the Chinese Communist Party is fundamentally an atheist regime.
Yes.
They had the Cultural Revolution that just ended in the 70s. It didn't end very long ago.
Yes.
And they decimated all religion, all spiritual understandings. They made everybody swear allegiance to Mao. They killed millions of people in the Cultural Revolution, destroyed all kinds of temples, all kinds of beautiful shrines. And that today in China, people, they can say they're Christian, they can say they're Catholic, they can say they're Jewish. They have the Muslims in China as well. But the Communist Party, the rules of the Communist Party are your religion, your chosen God. You must put the Communist Party over your belief in your chosen God, or you're persecuted. So all religions inside China now are basically political weapons. They're political weapons that are being used to keep the people in line, because that's what the Communist Party wants, is to keep people, to stay in power,
Yes.
to keep people in line. And that's what happened with Falun Gong, is Falun Gong said, no, we're not political, we do not want any affiliation with any political party, and, we're a spiritual discipline. Chinese Communist Party didn't like that, because
Yes.
they need that control over those people. And if you give people a spiritual discipline that's not controlled, and the spiritual discipline is teaching truth, compassion, and tolerance, which goes completely opposite to the communist ideology of control and force.
Compassion and doesn't fit
doesn't
the
fit
model.
the bill, right? So
And forbearance really doesn't either, does
Right.
it?
So
Truth,
No.
My gosh.
Yeah.
And then in terms of human rights, my gosh.
Well, it's interesting because, China comes out every year as one of the top world's human rights abusers in the world. But every year they come out and they say something like, our economic growth has been amazing and now people can stay out at night late and there's no more curfew and there's no more. But they're masters at manipulation. That's what it comes down to, is the Chinese Communist Party continues to persecute people, not just the Falun Gong, but we've seen what they did to Tibet. We've seen what they did to the autonomous region up in the Uyghurs, which are a Muslim people that they've completely decimated. And they create these master manipulation moves. Like, Falun Gong is political. So if anybody who attacks the Communist Party or talks about the Communist Party's human rights are political. And if they're political, they're against China. And if they're against China, then they're against the Chinese people. So they create this kind of like this shield around them that protects the Communist Party from any sort of Western Amnesty International or government saying, China, the Communist Party, stop persecuting your people. Well, the Communist Party says these people are attacking the Communist Party, which means they're attacking China, which means they're attacking the Chinese people. So the Chinese people look at Amnesty International as a terrorist organization. They look at Amnesty International as a political organization that's against China. They look at Falun Gong as a political organization that's against China. So they've created this bubble.
Yes.
Where their own people that they're persecuting are actually the same people that are protecting them. It's very strange.
I had an aunt like that. Exactly like that. What you're talking about collectively for a nation, I had an aunt that everything was interpreted in terms of, you're giving me a hard time and I have the right to defend myself even if I have to harm you. And I thought, this is craziness. And I saw a picture of her the other day when she was near the end of her life, and she had no energy around her. Now, within the context of international, collectively, the Chinese, the energy they're using is a dark energy.
It's a dark energy.
And it will devour them, not because we want them to be devoured, but it's because the nature of that dark energy turns on the one who is open to it and devours them, not just what they consider the enemy.
Right.
So it's like what you're doing is holding your ground, being dignified, having compassion, being open, and that you can let them destroy themselves. And from what I see of your group and with you, you'll be there to help them when they fall, because they may be at a place where now they can make the transition to have some dignity that's within themselves, that human dignity that they've been denying for
50 years.
For 50 years.
50 years.
Because that human dignity is there. It's there, it's innate. But they have to let go of this darkness as it devours them. So I don't want that to happen. It will just happen because, like you said, the universe keeps tabs. And it does this not to punish people. It does this for their awakening. But I'm very happy that some people don't have to go through that level of darkness. They can sidestep it all by doing these exercises, being the exercises that you do, and being aware of their own humanity. Okay, that's needed. And it sounds so simple, but we set up an intent. That's how we shall act in the world.
As we practice being the solution, what is the solution for Falun Gong? For instance, you mentioned Amnesty International. Rather than looking for the Chinese to change, given that it grew from nominal, you said the 90s?
1992, yeah.
1992 to over 100 million
In China alone.
in a decade.
Yeah.
is the opportunity to grow, what is the opportunity to grow to 1 billion beyond China, but throughout the world? Or is there an opportunity to create a signature list, through the internet, where there'll be, what do you see as the scalable solution and enlightenment?
I think, Falun Gong, again, it's a very personal. We believe in predestined relationships, right? We do believe in predestiny. So if you're predestined to practice, you'll practice. If you're not, you won't, right?
Okay.
We're not out there
Converting or
converting
or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
Our solution is, like awareness is the light that turns on in a dark room. Once the light turns on, the darkness disappears, right?
Yes.
Our solution is to reach as many people as we can. So again, they can have the choice to choose to side with, a spiritual discipline that promotes the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance, or they can choose to side, or rather than choosing to side with, this dark entity that is there, that has a desire to punish or to hurt innocent people, right? We've seen it time and time again throughout our lifetime. Genocide after genocide. Where people, after it's done, after the atrocities come out of what Hitler did to the Jews or what happened in Rwanda,
Yes.
never again. Never again. We'll never let this happen again. But it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again, because we don't, I think as a people we forget, or we don't really understand that there is evil in our society, and that we have to be vigilant to remember that, and to tone our goodness, like tone our understandings to watch for that evilness. Because when we make that decision, when we make that fateful decision to either go toward the light or go toward the darkness, that's it. Our
Towards
souls,
the positive or towards the negative?
towards the positive, towards the negative. Our souls have made that decision. That's the trajectory that we will go down for the rest of our lives, and it will affect us. It'll affect our children. It'll affect everyone.
Yes.
So our goal is to reach as many people as possible, to bring the word, so they can at least position their hearts towards what's right for their own future, I think. Yeah.
Is there a way for our audience to learn some of the disciplines of Falun Gong?
There's a website that they could go to. It's Falun Info, Falun Info.
Yes.
.net, faluninfo.net. There's some great videos on there, some great information. Take a flyer when you see someone on the street,
Yes.
If you see them doing the exercises at one of the practice sites, just come on up and tap someone on the shoulder. They'll be happy to show you the exercises, free of charge. They'll never charge you any money. You can come and go as much as you want.
Yes.
And we're here for the people. So
Are there places in our city here is Toronto? Are there places in Toronto that we could find practices?
yeah, at the City Hall downtown on the Saturday and Sundays. We're
Yes.
at the City Hall right in front of Nathan Phillips Square.
Yes.
We're
What
also
times?
At the times around noon, around lunchtime.
Yes.
Right. And again, if you will go on that website, faluninfo.net.
FALUN
Right.
info.net.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can navigate there, and you can find the practice site times there as well.
Yes.
And we're out in Mississauga, we're in Markham, we're everywhere. You name it, you'll be able to find it. Yeah.
And the practice times typically I'll use noon. Is it an hour or 2 hours or what?
It's whatever you want. It's
Okay.
whatever you can do, but
Yes.
usually it's an hour for the standing exercises,
Yes.
and an hour for the sitting exercises. And once you're finished that night, I guarantee you will sleep like a baby. Yeah, the energy is just so pure, it's so powerful, and it's so beautiful. Like, you'll sleep like you've never slept before. It's very, very nice.
That is amazing. Joel, I can't thank you enough
I thank you.
for sharing, your experience, your sacred, your enlightening experience, and to all of the Falun Gong practitioners, my gratitude for the sacred reverence for all life that is being demonstrated.
Thank you very much.
Joel Chipkar, thank you.
Steve, thank you, sir. Thanks for setting this up. Appreciate it.
Joel, you're amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Hilton.
And it's really such a wonderful example. You're not from the Asian or Chinese culture, and to see the embrace. So this is truly global citizenry.
Yes.
And it's divinity in action. It's divine times. This is what we have to embrace. This is Hilton Milan asking you to tune in to your divine times. Make it so. We'll see you in the light. Your light.